There's no room for you, Lyra. This isn't some village club. This is an expensive restaurant. My mother's words cut through the noise like a blade dipped in poison. Everyone at the long mahogany table froze, forks halfway to mouths, wine glasses trembling slightly in the air. The waiter standing beside us looked uncomfortable, shifting his weight from one leg to another. I wanted to melt into the floor right then and there. But instead, I just smiled. A small, tight smile that hid the storm brewing inside me. I reached for my glass of iced tea, took a slow sip, and said nothing. Because this time, silence was my weapon. You see, this wasn't the first time my mother had humiliated me in public. But it was going to be the last. Before diving into the story, comment where you're watching from and don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the latest stories. I grew up in a family where appearances meant everything. My mother, Margaret Carter, was the kind of woman who planned her family's Christmas photos 6 months ahead and made sure everyone's outfits matched her pearls. She believed success wasn't about kindness or integrity, it was about how expensive your shoes looked when you walked into a room. And me? I was the odd one out, the quiet one, the artist's daughter who preferred thrift stores to boutiques, who painted on weekends instead of brunching with her friends. The one who refused to marry the lawyer she tried to set me up with because, as she said, he'd make you look respectable. For years, I tried to earn her approval. Straight A's,
College degree, steady job.
even bought her the bracelet she always wanted. But with my mother, love always came with a receipt attached. And tonight, at this dinner table, surrounded by our perfectly dressed relatives and her country club friends, she reminded me again just how far beneath her I was. It started when I walked into the restaurant, a high-end French place in downtown Chicago called Le Mirabelle, the kind where you had to whisper your order like a secret. My brother, Ethan, was already there, his arm around his wife, both laughing with my mother. When I reached the table, my mother's smile faltered. Her eyes darted to my floral dress, simple, cotton, the kind you buy at a boutique for $40, and then to her friend's glittering jewelry. "Oh, Lyra," she sighed, her voice dipped in fake sympathy. "There's no room for you. This isn't a village club, but an expensive restaurant." A few awkward chuckles followed. My mother loved saying cruel things disguised as jokes. I didn't argue, didn't beg. I just slid quietly into an empty chair at the corner, pretending not to notice how everyone avoided eye contact. The waiter came, and as my mother ordered for everyone, expensive dishes none of us could pronounce, she made sure to include a jab here and there. Oh, Lyra doesn't eat seafood. Not sophisticated enough for her taste. Oh, she still rents, you know. Never could save enough for a house. Laughter again. Polite.
Shallow.
Painful. Inside, I was shaking. But outside, I was calm. Because what my mother didn't know was, I wasn't the same person who used to shrink under her voice. I had something planned. I looked around that table, at the people who once made me feel like a shadow in my own family. And I thought of the years I'd spent trying to make them proud. But a funny thing happens when you stop needing someone's approval. You stop fearing them. I finished my drink, pushed back my chair, and stood up slowly. Every pair of eyes turned to me. My mother's painted smile faltered again. "Lyra, where are you going?" "We're just getting started." I smiled. "I know. That's why I left something behind." She frowned, confused. But I didn't explain. I just picked up my purse and walked out, my heels clicking softly against the marble floor, leaving behind a quiet tension that settled over the table like fog. Because what they didn't know was that I had left behind something that would change everything, something that would expose what my mother really was beneath her perfect smile. And when it happened, no one at that table would ever look at her the same again. That was the night my revenge began. Not with shouting, not with drama, but with quiet, deliberate silence, and a plan years in the making. Because when your own mother spends her life making you feel small, the sweetest revenge isn't loud. It's watching her crumble under the weight of her own lies. And that's exactly what was about to happen. When I stepped out of Le Mirabelle, the cold Chicago air hit me like a slap, sharp and clean. The night was quiet except for the faint hum of cars passing by. My reflection stared back at me in the restaurant window, calm, collected, but behind that calm was a fire that had been burning for years. As I walked to my car, I could still hear her voice echoing in my head. This isn't some village club, Lyra. Every word was coated with superiority, the same tone she used when she told me I'd never amount to anything without her guidance. What she didn't know was that I had stopped needing her long ago. 2 years earlier, I had hit rock bottom. My fiancé had left me the same week I lost my job. I remember calling my mom, crying, hoping she'd just listen. But instead, she sighed dramatically and said, "Lyra, maybe this will finally teach you what happens when you don't listen to me."
No comfort. No empathy.
Just judgment. After that, I decided something inside me. If I was ever going to rise, I'd do it without her help, and one day, she'd watch me do it. That's when I started my own small interior design business. I worked ridiculous hours, picking up clients through word of mouth, decorating apartments and offices for people who didn't care about big names, just honesty and taste. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. And slowly, things started to change. A boutique hotel reached out after seeing my work on Instagram. Then a real estate firm hired me for their model homes. Within 18 months, I was making more than I ever had at my old job. But I didn't brag, didn't post, didn't tell my family. I wanted to stay quiet, invisible, until the right moment. Because silence can be power, too. My mother, on the other hand, loved attention like oxygen. Every dinner party, she'd talk about my brother Ethan, his perfect marriage, his law firm, his spotless reputation. She never mentioned me unless it was to mock me. So when I got her invitation to that dinner at Le Mirabelle, I knew it wasn't about family. It was about performance. Her husband's business partners were in town, and she wanted the Carter family to look perfect. But perfect families don't exist, and I was about to show her that. 3 days before the dinner, I quietly contacted a friend of mine, Jenna, a digital PR consultant who helped businesses clean up their online image. I told her I needed the opposite. I wanted something revealed. You see, my mother had a secret, one that even Ethan didn't know. A few years back, when my father was still alive, I discovered that my mother had been siphoning money from his company, hiding funds through shell accounts to pay for her designer lifestyle. Dad found out, but before he could act, he had a heart attack. The family called it stress-related. I called it guilt. After he passed, she quietly erased all traces, or so she thought. But I had kept copies. Emails, bank transfers, screenshots, everything. I never used them before, because part of me still hoped she'd change. That maybe one day she'd see me as a daughter, not a disappointment. But after tonight, that hope was gone. Now, it wasn't about her approval anymore. It was about truth. The surprise I'd left behind at the dinner was a simple one, my old tablet propped innocently against a vase of flowers. The moment I walked out, a pre-scheduled email from my account sent a link to everyone at that table. The link contained all those files. Emails, transaction logs, fake invoices, proof that Margaret Carter, the picture-perfect mother, had stolen hundreds of thousands from her late husband's company. I didn't stay to see their faces, but I could imagine it. The shock, the whispers, the quick glances. By the time I reached home, my phone had 20 missed calls, from Ethan, from her, even from one of her friends. I didn't answer. I just poured myself a glass of wine, sat by the window, and watched the city lights flicker. For the first time, I felt light. That night, she left me a voicemail. Her voice trembled, half anger, half fear. "Lyra, what have you done? You think this makes you look good? You'll regret this." I saved it. Not because I was scared, but because I wanted to remember that tone. The one I'd never heard from her before, the sound of control slipping away. The next morning, I woke up to chaos. My phone buzzed nonstop, news alerts, gossip sites, social media threads. Someone had leaked the documents further. It wasn't me, but once truth gets out, it spreads like wildfire. Margaret Carter, Chicago's socialite accused of financial misconduct. There it was, front page of a local business blog. The woman who'd spent years building her perfect image was now the center of a scandal. And me? I was just getting started. Because revenge isn't always about destruction. Sometimes it's about balance, about showing people that their cruelty has a cost. And for my mother, the bill had just arrived. The morning after the article broke, I woke up to a storm, not outside, but inside my phone. Dozens of messages, notifications, and missed calls. My brother Ethan's name flashed again and again, followed by my mother's. At first, I ignored them, but then I saw the one from Ethan that simply said, "You went too far, Lyra." Too far. Those two words hit me harder than I expected. I'd imagined anger, confusion, denial, but too far? After everything she'd done to me? After the humiliation, the manipulation, the endless nights of being made to feel small? Still, a part of me felt a flicker of doubt. I poured myself coffee and scrolled through the news. My mother's face was everywhere, the same face that used to glare down at me from family portraits, now caught mid-blink in paparazzi photos as reporters swarmed outside her gated home. The story had blown up overnight. Someone from the dinner table had tipped off a journalist. Maybe one of her so-called friends trying to save themselves. Margaret Carter, the symbol of high society grace, now accused of embezzling company funds. And me, the invisible daughter she once dismissed? I was suddenly getting messages from distant relatives I hadn't spoken to in years, all asking the same thing. Is it true? By noon, Ethan showed up at my apartment. He didn't even knock. He just barged in, eyes red, jaw tight. "Do you realize what you've done?" he snapped. I stayed calm. Told the truth. Truth? You humiliated her. In front of everyone, family, friends, investors. You could have talked to her, Lyra. You could have handled this quietly. I laughed bitterly. Quietly? Like how she's humiliated me for years? How she's stolen from Dad's company and from us? He flinched. That word, stolen, still had power. Dad wouldn't have wanted this, he said softly. I looked him dead in the eye. Dad wouldn't have wanted her to get away with it either. He didn't reply. He just ran a hand through his hair and whispered, "You've started something you can't control." Then he left. I wanted to believe I was right, that exposing her was justice. But for the first time since that dinner, I felt a twinge of guilt twist in my chest. Because he wasn't entirely wrong. Over the next week, everything spiraled. My mother's social circle collapsed almost overnight. Her charity board asked her to take a break. The business partners of her late husband froze all her accounts pending investigation. And yet, she didn't call me again. Not to scream. Not to apologize. Just silence. Then one night, I received an envelope under my door, hand-delivered. Inside was a photo. A picture of me from the dinner, mid-sip, calm and quiet. On the back, a note written in her flawless cursive. "You think you've won, but you've forgotten who taught you how to play." My hands went cold. Was it a threat? A warning? I didn't know, but I did know one thing. Margaret Carter wasn't done. 2 days later, I found out what she meant. My business email blew up with messages from clients, all suddenly reconsidering our contracts. Someone had sent them screenshots of edited messages, making it look like I'd badmouthed them behind their backs. My website was flagged for copyright issues. My business bank account temporarily frozen. It didn't take a genius to figure out who was behind it. My mother was fighting back, the same way she always had, behind closed doors, quietly, strategically. She couldn't destroy me with words anymore, so she was using influence. And it was working. In less than a week, I lost 3 major clients. My reputation, the one I'd built from scratch, started to crumble. I sat in my apartment, staring at the screen, realizing that maybe revenge wasn't as simple as exposing the truth. It comes with collateral damage. Jenna, my PR friend, came over that night. I told her everything. She listened quietly, then said, "You can't outplay her in her world, Lyra. You'll burn out trying." So what do? Just let her destroy me? No, she said. But stop fighting like her. You have something she doesn't, people who actually believe in you. Use that. Her words hit something deep inside me. All my life, I'd been reacting to my mother, her rules, her insults, her image. Maybe the real revenge wasn't about tearing her down anymore. Maybe it was about building myself so high she couldn't reach me. But before I could move forward, I needed to end the chaos once and for all. The next morning, I made one final move, not out of hate, but closure. I sent my mother a message. Mom, I'm done. No more games. No more silence. I'll clean my name, and you can try whatever you want, but this ends now. You can't erase the truth, not anymore. She never replied. But that afternoon, I saw her on TV, walking out of a courthouse in sunglasses, reporters shouting questions. For a moment, she looked small. Not the woman who ruled every room, but someone human. And that's when I realized the conflict wasn't between her and me anymore. It was between who I used to be and who I was becoming. It was raining the day I finally saw her again. Not a soft drizzle, but a cold, heavy downpour that soaked through your clothes and left the streets glistening under gray clouds. I was sitting in my car outside her mansion, or what used to be her mansion, because after weeks of investigations and frozen accounts, Margaret Carter had been forced to sell most of her properties. The woman who once judged people by the brand of their handbag was now quietly hiding from the same society she once ruled. I hadn't planned to go. But when I got the call from Ethan saying she was packing up and moving to a smaller place, something in me knew it was time to end this face-to-face. I parked the car, grabbed my umbrella, and walked up the long driveway. The front door was open. Boxes lined the hallway. And there she was, my mother, standing by the fireplace, holding a family photo like it was made of glass. For a moment, she looked older. Not just in age, but in spirit. The arrogance was gone. The sparkle dimmed. Lyra, she said without turning around. Come to gloat. I took a deep breath.
No.
I came to finish this. She turned, eyes sharp. Even now, even after everything, she carried that same cold authority. Finish what? You already destroyed everything I built. I looked around the room. The expensive art, the silk curtains, the furniture she'd bought with money that wasn't hers.
No, Mom.
You destroyed it yourself. I just made sure the world saw it. She laughed bitterly. You think you're righteous? You humiliated me, your own mother. For what? Revenge. For peace, I said quietly. I wanted you to stop pretending you were perfect. I wanted you to see what it felt like to be small. For a moment, the room was silent except for the rain pounding on the windows. Then she put down the photo and looked at me, really looked at me for the first time in years. You've always hated me, she said. Even as a child. You never understood the pressure I was under, keeping this family together, maintaining appearances. Do you think it was easy? I felt a tear sting behind my eyes, but I held it in. No, I don't think it was easy. But that doesn't excuse what you did. To Dad.
To me.
To everyone who trusted you. Her voice cracked. You think I don't regret it? That caught me off guard. I hadn't expected her to admit it. She sank into a chair, her hands trembling. When your father died, I panicked. Everything was slipping away, the house, the business, the life we built. I made stupid choices, Lyra. But I did it for this family. For the family? I said bitterly. You did it for your pride.
She didn't argue.
Maybe because she knew I was right. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The only sound was the ticking clock on the mantel. Then she said softly, You got what you wanted. Are you happy now? I took a long breath.
No.
I'm not happy. Because revenge doesn't fix what's broken, it just exposes it. She stared at me, eyes wet but unyielding. So what now? You want me to apologize? Fall to my knees? I shook my head.
No, Mom.
I want you to tell the truth.
Publicly.
Admit what you did. To Dad's company, to your friends. Not because I want to see you destroyed, but because maybe for once you can be honest. Her jaw tightened. And if I don't, then you'll live the rest of your life pretending again. But this time, no one's watching. For the first time, she didn't have a comeback. I turned to leave, but she called after me. Lyra. I stopped. She hesitated, then said, I did love you, you know. I just didn't know how to show it. I closed my eyes. Those were the words I'd wanted to hear my entire life, but now they felt empty. "I know," I whispered. "And that's what hurts the most." Then I walked out. The rain soaked through my jacket as I stepped outside, but I didn't care. For the first time, I felt free, not because I'd won, but because I'd finally stopped needing her approval. A week later, my mother held a press conference. She admitted to mismanaging company funds, apologized publicly, and agreed to cooperate with the authorities. It didn't erase what she'd done, but it was something. And though she never mentioned my name, everyone knew who had forced her hand. For the rest of the world, it was a scandal. For me, it was closure. I sat at my desk that night, staring at the rain streaking down my window again. The city outside was alive, glowing, moving forward. And I realized so was I. I didn't need revenge anymore. I didn't need validation. I just needed peace. And finally, I had it. It's been 6 months since that night at Le Mirabelle. 6 months since my mother's voice echoed across the table, sharp and cruel. 6 months since I left behind that quiet storm disguised as a dinner. And in those 6 months, everything changed, not just around me, but inside me. The scandal eventually faded from the headlines. Other stories replaced it. Other people fell. That's how the world works. Outrage has a short memory. But the damage it left behind didn't fade as easily. My mother sold the mansion, moved to a small house in the suburbs. She kept to herself mostly. I heard from Ethan that she started volunteering at a local charity, something small and quiet. He said she rarely spoke about the past, but that sometimes, when she did, she called it her reckoning. I don't know if that's guilt, regret, or just another form of pride, but for once, I didn't need to know. Because for the first time, her life wasn't controlling mine. My own life, meanwhile, began to rebuild. Slowly, quietly, but with purpose. The clients I'd lost during her retaliation reached back out after realizing the rumors weren't true. Some apologized, others didn't. That didn't matter. I took on new projects, bigger ones, this time under my own full name, Lyra Carter Design. The irony wasn't lost on me, using the same last name that once made me feel small, but now wearing it like armor. Every space I designed after that had a little piece of my story in it. Rooms that felt like peace. Homes that whispered resilience. Because revenge might have started my story, but healing finished it. One Saturday morning, while sorting through old sketches, I found something buried in a drawer, a photograph of me and my mother from when I was 12. We were at a summer fair, holding cotton candy, laughing. I stared at that photo for a long time, trying to remember what that laughter felt like. She wasn't always cruel. There were moments, rare ones, when she was human. When she taught me how to bake cookies, when she'd fix my dress for school dances, when she'd whisper, "You can do better, Lyra," in a tone that wasn't mocking, but hopeful. And I realized something then. Sometimes, the people who hurt us the most are the ones who are hurting themselves in ways they'll never admit. That doesn't excuse them, but it does explain them. A few weeks later, I decided to visit her. Not for confrontation, not for closure, just to see. She looked surprised when she opened the door, but not angry. Just tired. We sat in her small living room, surrounded by potted plants and secondhand furniture. For the first time, she made tea instead of ordering wine. Neither of us mentioned the past. There was no point. We just sat in silence for a while. Then she said, almost shyly, "I saw your feature in that design magazine. They called you the new voice of modern interiors. You've done well." I smiled. "Thank you." She nodded slowly, then said something I never expected. "I'm proud of you, Lyra." It wasn't grand. It wasn't emotional. But it was real. And for me, that was enough. When I left her house that day, I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt light. I had spent so many years craving her approval, chasing validation, thinking revenge would somehow make up for the pain. But standing there, under that soft afternoon sun, I finally understood. The best revenge isn't destroying someone who hurt you, it's rebuilding yourself into someone they can never break again. And that's exactly what I did. Sometimes, people ask me if I regret it, exposing her like that. The truth is complicated. Do I regret the chaos that followed? Maybe. But do I regret standing up for myself? Never. Because that dinner, that humiliation, that quiet moment when I took a sip and said nothing, that was the last time I ever let someone decide my worth. Now, every time I walk into a restaurant, any restaurant, I remember her words. This isn't a village club, Lyra. And I smile. Because she was right. It's not a village club. It's my life. My success. My peace. And I earned every bit of it on my own terms. If I've learned anything, it's that revenge doesn't always look like rage or destruction. Sometimes it looks like calm confidence, like quiet dignity, like walking away without needing to look back. Because the real power isn't in making someone else fall, it's in proving that you can rise, even after they tried to bury you. And that's exactly what I did.